Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Recycling Works, gain community support by telling the real story. A free webinar brought to you by the Maryland Recycling Network. I'm Peter Houstel, MRN's Executive Director, and will soon be joined by Chaz Miller of Miller Recycling Associates, along with Gretchen Carey from MassRecycle, who will tell us how we can debunk disinformation and gain community support by telling the real story about recycling. But before we go there, let's take a minute to look at what's coming up on our calendar. On Thursday, April 10th, we have another webinar on local food waste prevention campaigns as part of Food Waste Prevention Week. Then on Thursday, April 24th, Lisa Scianella will give us a tour of HELPSY's new textile facility in Upper Marlboro. And on Tuesday, May 20th, you can help us drive reuse in Maryland by volunteering with us at Community Forklift in Hyattsville. Registration for these events is open now, and you can sign up online. We've also scheduled a tour of the Eco City Farm in Bladensburg on July 15th. Registration and details will be open soon. And of course, on Monday, June 9th, I sure hope to see you at the Turf Valley Conference Center for the 2025 MRN SWANA Mid-Atlantic Annual Conference. You can see the preliminary program on the website, and exhibit sales along with registration are open now. So be sure to check it out. Check out the website for details and sign up today. On the admin side of things, please feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat box. And we'll be posting a recording of the webinar on our website next week, which you're welcome to share with any and all who might be interested. So while most of these programs are free, they depend on the financial support of our members. So let me start by offering a big thank you to all of our current members. Though as I'm sure you've heard me say many times before, and I'll keep saying it, we don't have any non-members. We just have paying members and non-paying members. So if you're one of those non-paying members, please head over to our website after this program and join today. You can become a paying member for as little as $25 a year. That's like 50 cents a week. Thank you in advance. And speaking of support, I want to give a shout out to our sustaining and patron members, whose contributions, along with that of all our members, help us continue to support your efforts to drive reduction, reuse, and recycling. Okay, without further ado, it's time to turn the mic and the screen over to Chaz and Gretchen so they can help us get the real story across to our communities. Chaz, you're up first, so please take it away.
Hey everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar. Delighted to have everybody here. I want to start off by just pointing out media attacks on recycling are common. Whether it's a reporter looking for a scoop, an author looking for an angle for a book, or an anti-plastics group attacking plastics recycling because, well, why credit your enemy with doing anything right? So I'm going to talk about lies, damn lies, and statistics. Just sort of three of them really in this thing. Starting off with the claim that the recyclables we put on the curb end up at the landfill. And I've often heard this said as 80% or more of what we put at the landfill is recycled, or is landfilled, I'm sorry. What a waste of our time and effort you put into putting that bin on the curb. But let's start off with what exactly it is that we put into our recycling bins. And a PDF of the slides and our speaker notes will be available from the MRN after this presentation, so you don't need to hurriedly try to write things down. But what is this? And where do they go? This is from Montgomery County. It's simply a look at our dual stream system, a bin for mixed containers, a wheel cart for paper, and then a bag for leaf waste. What these really are they're just raw materials looking for a buyer. And that buyer is someone who's making a bet. It's a procurement manager for a company. And making a bet on the future on how much raw materials they'll either need for their products, for the packages for those products, or how many boxes they'll need for shipping those products. And they're making those bets on where they think the economy is going. And they want, from their raw material suppliers, you putting those materials at the curbside, consistent quantity, at a consistent quality, at an acceptable price. And of course, it's the MRF, the materials processing facility, that supplies that quantity and quality at a good price. So let's take a quick look at where your recyclables go. We'll start off with the metals, with aluminum and steel cans. Aluminum is easy. in one sense. Highly circular. The alloy can only be used for aluminum cans, so they go right back into aluminum cans. Steel is highly versatile. Electric arc furnace, which is the primary way of making steel products in this country, thrives on scrap. It takes any kind of scrap and turns it into any kind of a steel product. And I happen to think that it would be kind of cool if someday one of my steel cans ends up in the new Key Bridge. Let's look at glass. Again, some systems you can get glass back into bottles, whether it's deposit systems, but it's also possible in a lot of the dual curbside systems. But if you're single stream, you're going to end up with broken glass of mixed color. That will become either a fiberglass product or it's going to go to various aggregate uses. What about paper? Paper, boxes, and you see the slide on my side, it's the left, probably on yours, it's the right. But the fluted medium, that's called corrugated medium, and it's in between a layer of liner board. That, of course, is what a cardboard box is made out of. Those boxes you put on the curb almost always end up as new boxes. The other material, the residential mixed paper, because it's a mix of paper, it goes into a variety of stuff. It could go into pizza boxes. It could go into molded pipe. It could go into all those different paper articles shown on the slide. Again, one is very circular. The other has more options and more outlets. But let's get into plastics, because plastics is, of course, a big interest of everybody. It also makes this a little bit more confusing. PET bottles, let's start with those. PET bottles now, the major buyer, the major end market is new beverage container bottles. This didn't be the case, in fact, since about the mid-'80s until 2021. The bigger market for PET bottles was fiber products, whether it was carpets, clothing, just fiber itself. That has changed. Now there's more interest in the bottle companies to using old bottles to make into new bottles. So we're seeing more of that than we did before. What about polypropylene packaging? Polypropylene is kind of an odd resin in the sense that it's the second most commonly used plastic resin in all of the plastic products that we use throughout our days. But it's primarily used for durable products, things such as toys or battery cases, garden tools, fiber. There's not a lot of packaging that comes in polypropylene, and it's primarily dairy products, yogurts, ice creams, that sort of thing. So you can recycle those packages into a lot of durable products and some non-food contact packages. These are paint pails made by KW Plastics, which is one of the two largest plastics recyclers in the country. But you're not going to be as likely to recycle those back into a dairy product package, although that's happening, that's starting to happen. Now we get into the conundrum of HDPE, natural and colored. Natural HDPE is mostly milk jugs. It's called natural or translucent because there's no dye in that package. It's just the resin in a translucent state. Mostly milk jugs, although not completely. It can go back into milk, food contact, but it's more likely to go into any kind of a non-food contact color HDPE container, such as all the detergent containers you see on this counter. It can be white, it can be red, it can be green, it can be blue, it can be yellow. The problem, though, with all those colors, you can't take the dye out of the resin. Once it's dyed resin, you can't pull the dye out. So what that means is those products become pipes. And this is a picture of pipes made by a company called ADS, along with KW, one of the two largest plastics recycling companies out there. And those pipes are then dyed. They take all those multicolored bottles, they dye them either black or white, and they create pipe. The pipe lasts for several decades, and it displaces a virgin product in the pipe. It's the use of recycled content. It's a great market, and it's just, if you will, it's not circular, but it's a very steady market. Let's look at yard waste and food waste. I wanted to bring this up because I know in Montgomery County and a lot of parts of Maryland, we collect most programs collect yard waste at the curbside. Some are doing yard waste. In Maryland, in particular, here in Montgomery County, the yard waste all is composted, and it's turned into a product called Leaf Grow Soil Conditioner. You can find it at a lot of the garden stores throughout Maryland. Great product as a soil conditioner. If it's food waste, it's more likely to go to Prince George's County, where they take the food waste and they compost it into a product called Leaf Grow Gold, because apparently it's just a little bit better with that food waste in it, but also a soil conditioner. So it's very clear. Recyclables go to end markets. They are used as raw materials. Contaminants, non-recycled material that's we hope accidentally placed in the bin, are landfilled, as they should be. We don't have anything to do with those contaminants yet. Hopefully we will learn ways to do with them, but right now they're a mistake. They can't be recycled. They do have to be landfilled. Contamination rates at MRFs run around 15 to 20%, and one of our goals should be to lower that rate. But let's look at plastic recycling as a fraud. Y'all may have seen this documentary on PBS, but about 21 or 22, I think. Quite a documentary. It was very well done. The whole idea is questioning if plastics recycling is real. And it's this idea of plastics recycling as a fraud it's been in books, it's been on the media, it's been in newspaper stories and magazine stories, web stories. This particular documentary was very, very well done as a documentary. And there was some accuracy in it, but there was also a lot of stuff taken out of context. Those of you who saw it may remember the aha moment when our busy journalist at the DuPont Library pulls out a paper and says, aha, this proves they've always been lying about plastics recycling. It was a 1973 memo that said we can't recycle plastics. What the documentary failed to tell you was what plastic products existed in 1973. It was mostly durable products, furniture, casings for transistor radios, casings for a lot of products, casings for batteries, virtually no packages. Yet what do we think of first when we think of plastics? It's packages. And the packages that existed in 1973 was saran wrap. And yeah, we still really don't know how to efficiently recycle saran wrap. It is a particularly tough plastic to recycle. And the other problem with that documentary was there was little interest in acknowledging successful recycling and a great deal of interest in acknowledging and exposing scams. And yes, recycling has always been plagued with unscrupulous operators who will slip contaminants in bail, whatever, to get the product moving. But they're not the norm, they're the exception. So, is plastic recycling a fraud? Well, the first 2 days of this week, I was at the Plastics Recycling Conference. It was at National Harbor in Prince George's County in Maryland. There were over 2,500 attendees and more than 200 exhibitors at that conference, and actually at the previous two. And they did not go to National Harbor just to take a vacation. They went there to meet buyers, to meet sellers, to see how they could make plastic recycling more stronger and better, to find those end markets, to sell their products. They were there because plastic recycling is a very, very real business. But they're also difficult to recycling, and this is the problem we're dealing with. There's far more product types made out of plastics than paper or metals, and you've got all those colors and all those resins. Yet paper is mostly just boxes, and they're brown, and cans are just metal. It's worth pointing out with plastics, PET, HDPE, and low-density polyethylene are about 78% of the packaging resins, but PET isn't even one of the three most used plastic resins of all. 2/3 of the plastics resins we use are low-density polyethylene, polypropylene, and HDPE. So there's some real differences between resins, which ones are used the most and which ones isn't. But of course, and the reality is there is no universal resin. Plastics are also far more than just packages. packaging is about 2/5 of all the plastics we generate and either discard or recycle in a year. Durables are a little bit under 2/5. And non-durables, which are things like clothes and shoes and cutlery and things like that that last generally less than 3 years, they're about 1/5. And you look at that plastics percentage, 60% of it is either bags, sacks, and wraps, or it's this wildly diverse category called other: coatings, closures, trays, loose feel. And the reality is we have a great deal of trouble recycling either one of those two categories. We're making some serious and significant breakthroughs on the bag, sacks, and wraps part, especially the use of plastic lumbers, especially those store drop-offs, especially pallet wrap goes right into plastic lumber. Great markets, but there's still a long way to go on both of those too. And what that means in reality is our recycling programs focus on rigid plastic containers, which are actually a little bit under 20% of the plastics we generate in a year. So why is anybody surprised the plastics recycling rate is only 8.7%? It's the bar we have set is so low that it's going to be very hard moving that plastic recycling up. We have to expand into other products. We have to expand into things such as furniture, into various clothing products, into a lot of the durables that we currently recycle. And until we do that, we're going to be so limited in what we do. So let's look at the idea that plastic recycling is stagnant. I hear that one a lot, but you got to remember, as many people have said in the past about statistics, they're very tricky. They can be unintentionally misleading. And a lot of the data we have for waste and recycling, it's full of estimates and guesstimates. There's a lack of the kind of precision you really want. They're good. In many cases, they're very good because they got better control over the data, but they're not rocket science yet. So I got a question for you. What is EPA's most recent recycling rate? This is 2018. Is it 38.2%? Is it 36.4%? Or is it only 32%? I want y'all to think about that for a second. Decide for yourself which of those three numbers, the 38, the 30, 36, or the 32 is right. This is the answer. It's all of the above, because EPA, and the way it's done its recycling reports, and the latest was 2018 data in 2020, actually gave you three potential recycling rates in that report. For those of you who said 38.2%, that is what EPA defines as total recycled, composted, and other food management, okay? The one in the middle is just products and materials recycled. It's without the yard waste and the food waste. And that 32.1% is all of MSW recycled and composted, leaving out all that other food management, if you will. And of course, which number is always cited in media exposés of recycling? It is always the lowest number. Now, why did this happen? Well, largely because EPA, when it did that report, discovered 23 million tons of food waste they hadn't counted before. It was stuff that went to what EPA called other management pathways: co-digestion, food donation, animal feed, etc. Yet all that extra tonnage drives down the recycling composted numbers because that material technically is neither recycled nor composting. So all of a sudden it looked like recycling went down when in fact the bottom number just got increased by 23 million tons. And there's also the impact of lightweighting. That's one of the most significant impacts of plastic packaging. It lowers the overall per person amount of waste we create, and it puts a damper on the increase in overall garbage because plastics are so lightweight compared to their competitors. So, is recycling stagnant? Well, again, you look at our municipal recycling programs, they focus on package and printed paper. They focus on yard waste. That's less than half of MSW. Even if we recycled 100% of those materials plus the other MSW recycled in 2018, we'd be a little over half. Again, the bar is being set low. We've got to look at food waste. We have to look at furniture or clothing if we're really going to expand that recycling rate. So, are our recyclables landfilled? No. For the most part, they go to end markets that want to use them as a raw material and will use them as a raw material as long as they meet that, that consistent quality and quantity and at a good price criteria. Understandable, but they are being bought. They are being used. Is plastic recycling a fraud? Absolutely not. It's very real, but it is also very challenging. And I think a lot of times we underestimate the challenge. Is recycling stagnant? No, but it's very clear that tonnage and percentage gains are clearly slowing down as MSW lightweights. And it's very clear that paper, metals, and glass recycling are simply collateral damage in the assault against plastic recycling. With so much negativity from the anti-plastics groups, and I agree with some of the things they have to say in regard to plastics themselves, nonetheless, that very negative attitude towards plastic recycling, denigrating it, downplaying it, coming up with phony numbers, making it even lower than the 8.7%, that's got a very negative impact on overall recycling. So, well, that was supposed to go backward. One last thing, is recycling broken? No. However, you have to accept the fact that the MRF technology is always going to be in a race. MRFs themselves in a race to catch up with new technology. The advancements we've seen in the use of artificial intelligence, robots, optical sorting, you name it. You can't just wave a wand and all 400 MRFs in this country will automatically upgrade themselves on the dot. It's not like a new system, a new iOS for my Apple. MRFs always race to catch up with new technology. We need to create a recycling culture. We need to create just where recycling is part of the norm, even more normal than putting out the garbage, just something people do. And we are so far from being there, but it's where we need to be. And it's also simply the matter of time. Rome was not recycled in a day. These things take time, and we have to accept that. We need a little bit more patience, a little bit more steadiness in our approach. So this is my contact data. It's also Gretchen's. I put us both on this slide. Feel free to contact us. Love to hear from you, and happy to take questions when we get to that. So now it's up to Gretchen.
All right. Thank you so much, Chaz. And thank you, Peter, and everyone for coming today. Really appreciate this. Chaz and I do this together because there's so much information and we both kind of have an angle on it that I think plays really well together. So thank you for inviting us to hear all of this. So, all right, I have been in the field for about 15 years. However, I will say that I have this constant misinformation about our field was kind of background noise to me until about 2022, at which point Greenpeace put out a report saying that circular claims fall flat again. And that probably wouldn't have been a big deal by itself because Greenpeace doesn't have a huge following at this point. But that report was picked up by National Public Radio and the Boston Globe, which means all of a sudden it fell directly into my territory and caused a really big backlash. Okay, and the problem is that both of these two media sources are well accepted. They're known to be good sources of information. I was pretty crushed, and I was not nearly as crushed as some of the other people in my community because the idea of we're used to being the victims of big oil stories, but getting hit from the left hurts more, and getting hit from particularly NPR. I'm a sustaining member. Okay, the idea that they had created an article that was that wrong. Literally, she said, not even plastic water bottles are recyclable. And I just like how patent a lie was that, right? So this, I'm a redhead from Boston, and I got, as we say, wicked pissed about it. So The next thing was to go out and do something about it. It took me about a week before I could even write a letter of rebuttal because I was so angry. And I wrote it to the author of the NPR article. And I'd be happy to go into why she wrote what she did. Let's just say she had old data. I'll go with that. And yeah, started there, tried to put written responses into a lot of local newspapers to try to get the word out that way. We did not get taken up on that offer, which seems to be a thing that happens a lot. It's, it's okay if they throw down in the first place, but the response is not appreciated. So we went a different direction, which was because of the fact that we normally do tours at MassRecycle most months. And that gave us a platform to invite people in. So what we did was we invited people in, and I will talk more about that in a minute, but we did a member newsletter, for instance, that we have a newsletter that reaches about 3,500 people, and that's a lot bigger than our actual member base. We went to Boston 25 News and talked to them. We met with WBZ TV, so both the local TV stations. WBUR Radio, I happen to have friends there. That's an NPR station. The Boston Globe, where the original article had shown up. Waste Dive Magazine, friends there. And Waste Advantage Magazine. So, we really wanted to get outside of the industry. There's an echo chamber where, people write things that are really well written, but if it doesn't get out to the general populace, that doesn't change their opinions. And that was what we were really out to do. So, and considering our letter had not been picked up, the news was the way to go. And so we wanted to really hit people where they were. So the idea of, dinner, the news over dinner, right? Everyone's listening and watching. That's kind of what we aimed for. And the others happened to be convenient and helpful because I knew people there. And I'll go into how that works out. So yeah, I'm going to tell you what we did, why we did it, how we did it, and how you can do it. That's my plan here. What we said was come and see it for yourself. All right. So we went to the TV journalists, we went to the NPR journalists and said, there's a lot of misinformation in the media going on right now about recycling. We'd like to invite you in to our recycling facilities to see it for yourself. And that is, that's an offer that's hard to resist for most journalists. So it worked. We also took not just journalists, but we took business owners, we took Cub Scouts, we took MassRecycle members, we took MassRecycle members' families, we took anybody who wanted to go, literally. And we did it in several different MRFs across both Massachusetts and even into Connecticut. So Republic-owned, WM, a smaller local group called OPR, and a big MRF down in Connecticut. And we took, all of these were MassRecycle tours. I also did a ton of tours myself because I worked at Republic until recently. And we did something like 22 tours that year. Okay, so not quite every week, every other week. And I would not have, that was kind of where it landed. I would not have done anything more with it, except that I happened to be part of NERC, the Northeast Recycling Council. And they asked several of us to write up a case study of what we had done and how it moved the needle. And yeah, when I actually had to start doing numbers, it was pretty amazing what we had actually accomplished. So the nightly news, WBZ TV news, nearly 500,000 viewers each night. I would not have guessed that. The Boston Globe got 250,000. And I knew it was a big deal because when I linked to that on LinkedIn, I had almost 5,000 views of that post, which I am not a 5,000 view kind of gal. Okay. That was pretty outstanding. And NPR, 800,000 local listeners and 9 million nationally. I did become, like a hero to my family across the country. That was pretty exciting. They all got to watch me. And our conference, not quite doubled the attendance. And this was the theme for the conference, was getting into the media and telling our own story, because everybody needs to be doing this. So here's my, tours, presentations, meetings. I went in, and that first month, all anyone said to me was, well, don't know why we're bothering to recycle, because it's all you're throwing it away all anyway, right? And I said, well, I'm just so glad to be here talking to you, because I can tell you what's actually happening out there. And I'd like you to come and see our recycling facility. And that turns people right around. The minute you're willing to be transparent about it and have them see it for themselves, all of a sudden they're paying attention. Okay. You can talk a good game, but seeing it seeing it for themselves is really the important part. Okay. So overall, we reached about 1.5 million people in Massachusetts. That was a real eye-opener to me. So here's some great pictures of our tours. We have everything here from the tours of colleges, this one in the top left-hand corner here is actually a Burlington Science Center that came to visit and then showed all the grammar school kids, which was awesome. That sort of thing. So we had a lot of tours. All right. What we said while they were on the tour, okay? For instance, I would start off by saying, how much of the material, what percentage do you think of the material coming into this MRF goes on to a second life? And usually people would start with the number 5 or 9%, which is that misquoted EPA number, or somebody else came up with that. And then I keep going, no, more. And the fact is that in Massachusetts, at least, it's an 80% number. And in some MRFs, it's 85. And in the Springfield MRF, they have, I don't know, something crazy like 3% contamination. All right. So that's way far different. At that point, you have everyone's attention. This is so out of line with what they already knew. Massachusetts has a recycling rate that I didn't update exactly, but it's we're 30% or a little less. Why? People look at us like we're throwing away this recycling, and that's why it's not happening. And the fact is that people are throwing away recycling on a daily basis. All I have to say is, have you ever been to a sporting event and watched what those, what that trash can look like? Tell me that it's, not the general populace throwing it away. I point out the fact that trashing stuff costs a lot of money in Massachusetts. And therefore, we want to take as much of this material as possible, sort it out, and sell it. Okay. And if we have to trash it, we have to pay that 150 a ton. So we prefer not to do that. We have DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, state guidelines in Massachusetts that say that certain things are not allowed in the trash, and they also keep an eye on us. And I finished with the Buy Sustainably story, as I call it. Arda was a glass manufacturing bottle-to-bottle company in Massachusetts for quite a while, and in 2018 went out of business or closed their doors in Massachusetts because, as I understand it, there were not enough people drinking beer in glass bottles. That's how it was told to me. And I always say I would have started a campaign if I'd known, but the fact is that people need to understand that if they put it in the bin and we take it away and sort it out and sell it to somebody, there has to be something being made out of it that then people buy. If people buy that item, they close the loop. If they don't buy the item and nobody buys the item, there is no reason for that manufacturer to buy our material. And that's what happened with Arda. So we need to be thinking about closing that loop with our wallets. I found that the most effective way to be a good storyteller for this was to be very clear on certain points. Do not sugarcoat anything. It doesn't help. It makes it worse. All right. So I state my boundaries. I don't know what's happening in the rest of the country, but in Massachusetts, this is how we do it. Okay. I admit that bad actors exist. I can tell you who they are. I won't, but I can. They do exist, but the majority of us are really trying to do the right thing. And you can see it happening out the window of our recycling facility, right? Businesses are here to make money. This, I think, is an imperative thing for people to say out loud, all right, for those of us who are in the industry. If you say things like, my company is attempting to save the planet, people go, yeah, sure. No, maybe, maybe not. You're a trash company. This is what I expect. This is what I get. I don't say that. I say we're here to make money, and this material is valuable to us. And admittedly, the value of it goes up and down every day, depending on how the market is changing, but it is definitely a commodity that we want to sell to someone. And that checks out with people. They're like, oh, yeah, I can see that. You're making money. All right. The Massachusetts waste bans, once again, DEP is watching and clarifying what gets trashed. All right. So there's a lot of stories about how we are trashing all these plastics. We're only looking for containers, rigid containers, that's your 1, 2s, and 5s, right? So the rest of it we didn't ask for and we don't want. And so when people say, what is it that you're trashing? What is all this trash? I say, look out the window and tell me what you see there. And they say, plastic bags. I say, yeah, that's pretty much it. Or the peanut butter jar that nobody took the peanut butter out of, or the yogurt that was half full, or whatever. It's containers that did not were not able to, as I put it, fly through the air with the optical sorter because they were too heavy due to the fact that they had food or drink in them. So dirty containers. And then there's other random stuff that we all know ends up in a MRF, right? Anything from bowling balls to you name it. So we'll see pictures of that. Here's this guy. He did a great job. He was definitely quizzing me. He's from WBZ TV News. He was quizzing me on the, like, what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen? And this happened to be laying on the floor. This is oh no, from the Marvel universe. This is the Infinity Stones in a glove. And he thought that was the best thing ever and kind of went crazy with it, punching himself in the video. But the fact is that lots of weird things end up there. And I think it was pretty clear to him that really it wasn't us throwing it away by the end of the tour. He could see that other people were throwing in random stuff, and that was the problem. When talking to TV or newspaper, when you're getting interviewed, prepare yourself for it. This is what I learned, okay? And I've done enough of these now that I can see there's a pattern to it, all right, and a way to prepare. Practice being succinct. So if you have a story to tell, write it down, and then keep taking words out of it until it is 2 sentences long. And then that is what you want to say at least twice, because that's what your point is. Maybe you have 2 points, maybe 3. Just keep it simple and keep coming back to your points. If you can make it funny, even better, right? And what I call sticking the landing, I took gymnastics as a kid, and it's all well and good to say smart things on your interview. Stick the landing by pulling out that sound bite that's what they're really looking for. If you've ever spoken to somebody in an interview, you're going to talk for 45 minutes and say all good things, and you're lucky if they come away with a couple of sentences that meant what you meant it to mean. And you want to be careful about saying something that can be taken out of context, right? That couple of sentences is very important and will end up in that article because you planned that, all right? Be real. Nobody believes a sugar-coated story. My company is saving the world. Yeah, we don't like that. Okay, as individuals, that's what we're doing. Companies, yeah, and embrace the emotion, all right? So they are going to say to you, it's so confusing. And I'm going to say, yes, it was before 2018. But in Massachusetts, we now have these statewide guidelines that make it so much easier. Let me show you Recycle Smart. That's a soundbite, right? That's also embracing his emotion or her emotion. So they're feeling heard. Okay, they understand that I heard what they just said, and I recognize that it's the truth because it was. It is still in so many people's minds because they haven't understood the guidelines are out there. But also, if you are really passionate about it, don't hide that. Okay, I am a redhead. I'm just saying, don't hide what you're thinking because people appreciate it when you are mad about the same things they're mad about. Okay, building relationships with the media. All right, first of all, it starts with this. Okay, because I had to stop and say, how did I end up with so many friends in the media? This is kind of crazy. And the fact is that I have kind of an overarching theme in which when I find somebody doing a good job at what they're doing, I let them know. It's really straightforward. Okay. When I find a good article in whatever media, I let the journalist know. I thought it was, unbiased. It was well researched. It hit the key points, whatever it was, right? And name a couple of things that you really liked about it, because that's what they want, is that feedback. Everybody wants positive feedback, but tell them what you thought they did right. And then that often starts a relationship, because they don't get that many letters like that, believe me. And contact them with article ideas, whether it's in your field or somebody else's. When you're seeing something that you're like, I live and breathe this stuff, but nobody outside my field knows this is happening, that's a good article idea. Let them do the research, right? Be a resource for them. This happened just because I ended up as president of MassRecycle, and therefore I know a ton of people in different facets, but you all know other people in your field. And if, for instance, you reach out with an article idea and it's not something you can talk about, but you say, I'm going to give you the background on this, and anytime you want background on my field, please call. I'm happy to talk to you. I don't need a quote. They love that. And I explain how the economics of it works and how, the social aspect of it, whatever it is. And then I say, who you should talk to is this person, this person. I'll introduce you. And they really appreciate that. Now they're off and running, right? So connect them to other people. Keep up this relationship. Invite them to your events. Doesn't matter if it's a webinar, if it's an in-person, if it's we have an awards ceremony, if it's a conference, whatever, or a tour, love tours. Invite them to your events. Give them press passes. Make them understand that they are an appreciated part of your world, and that pays off. Take them on those tours. Take them on private tours if you have that opportunity. I don't think any intelligent person wants to have someone tell them what to think. So don't tell them what they should be thinking. Ask them to ask you questions. Tell them what your facts are, and let them ask more questions. And then let them draw their own conclusions. So for instance, I went with Martha Biebinger of WBUR NPR station, and we were walking around. She was asking me about glass. Now in Massachusetts, we don't have an ARDA anymore. So glass it's a beneficial use most of the time. It's stepping up. We're getting some resources now. But at the time that I did that, I had to say it's really heavy. We don't ship it far. We don't have a great place for it. It ends up as alternative daily cover a lot. And I said it in such a way that it was the honest facts. If you're going to get quoted, just, try to say it carefully. But I figure it's not a bad thing for her to write an article saying that we need more manufacturers making things out of recycled glass in our state. Okay. She quoted me well. She was correct. It was a fact. And at the same time, it was an article that would let other people know that they are involved in the whole recycling system, even if they don't realize it. Like they put it in the bin on one side, but then also should be buying on the other side. And I thought that was a win. Lastly, if somebody comes up and wants to do an interview, be very cautious. Okay. I don't sweat a lot about gotcha journalism because I know who I'm talking to. If you get somebody who wants to do an interview with you, go out and say, let me talk to my boss, or whatever you need to do to stall for time. Go read their articles. If they are biased, walk away. Because if they talk to you, it could be that they come out biased in your favor. They could also come out biased against you, and you won't know which until it actually comes out in print. And that's terrifying. So if you look them up and every time you see them, they look like they're doing really good reporting, they're asking questions, it's unbiased, then, go ahead and take your chances, right? But at least you've already thought it through. And that is what I've learned through this entire adventure. It's been pretty exciting. So here's my information and Chaz's. You're welcome to reach out to either of us, and we're going to be hanging around for questions. And thank you so much for listening. I'll stop sharing now.
Very cool, Gretchen. And we do have one question in the chat I'd like to pass along. The question was from Richard Keller. Does the message change depending on the audience, like residents, businesses, multifamily, et cetera? And perhaps how does it change?
I don't, my facts don't change. I definitely I've had people say to me, like, how do I get recycling? Now that you're telling me there is a state waste ban, how do I get recycling going in my apartment complex? That happens for sure. Or businesses have said to me, you know, what they're trying to come up with something new and they want to know how it's going to make it through the process. But the fact is the process is the same rules apply every time the material comes through. The same numbers apply as they change over time, of course, whether we do better or worse in terms of contamination. But I won't change this story. I will go into more complexity depending on the question.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just echo that. Facts never change, but the audience does. Sometimes an audience is going to be more interested in one area or another, and you need to understand that with your audience. But yeah.
No, like, I mean, I've talked about, so for instance, I haven't done it on this particular round, but talking about food waste. Most people, when you talk about a compost site, you say you throw it down, nature breaks it down if it's outside, right? There's a lot more to it. Obviously, I've done entire podcasts on that. But the fact is that if you're talking to a bunch of life sciences, the next thing you know, a half an hour has passed and you're talking about the internal temperature of a 15-foot tall windrow. And you know what I mean? Like, you're going off about it, right? That's more details. And you always need to have those details in your pocket. Once you've done enough tours, you start understanding what kind of questions people are going to ask. But yeah, more details. No, the facts don't change.
So Gretchen, I do have a question for you. When are you moving to Maryland?
Thanks for the invite.
I'm thinking maybe if we could do some deal with MassRecycle, they get like 2 first-round draft choices in 26. I don't know how we work this out, but I'm thinking it would be great to have you on our team for at least a while to get us fired up, because I feel like MRN really needs to put together some kind of a media team. And I hope all the people in the audience are listening, because there are going to be some opportunities for people to raise their hand. And if you have that genetic disorder where you, like my partner / boss, somebody says, "Will you?" and before the sentence is finished, her hand goes up and she reaches into my pocket and pulls out my hand and says, "He can too." So we'll be looking for more of you to raise your hands when we go down this road, because I think there are some really practical steps that we can take to change the conversation in Maryland. And we'd love to really tap into anything we can, both with you, Gretchen, and with everybody else in the audience.
And
I would
Peter,
totally love that. And just, you know, the wonders of virtual connection, right? I will come down, and National Harbor is a favorite place to vacation on my part. But I will say I'm here for and have done similar things. Like I talked to Monroe County, thanks to Chaz, in New York, and then followed up with what can we be doing and how, you know. So even if you don't have a MRF, if you have a MRF, great, open the doors. If you can't get your MRF to do that for whatever reason, get a video of it and then show it to people. Have presentations. I have been floored as to how people really want to know the truth right now. Okay, this is a hot ticket, believe it or not. I have gone to evening presentations on really cold New England days and in libraries, and ended up with standing room only. 80 people showed up. Okay, I don't know why they left the warmth of their homes, but that was good of them. And I will say that it has been a constant since then, is that people want to know what's happening. And yeah, I have hints for titles and things like that that draw in the crowd. But yeah, it's a thing. People really want to know this, and they want to know that their time and energy is well used. They also believe so passionately that they're afraid that they're being taken advantage of. And so therefore they're likely to fall prey to that. But at the same time, they can't imagine trashing it. So they're left in this horrible dilemma.
I would add one thing. The Association of Plastics Recyclers in SWANA have a campaign going on that recyclers across the country open their doors to the public this May, in particular MRFs. They launched this on March the 11th, and you go to the APR website, and they have a list of MRFs that are currently signed up for this. Unfortunately, they don't include the 7 MRFs in any of the 7 MRFs in Maryland. So I'm hoping that we can get, and I know that most of these MRFs take tours. It's just a matter of getting them tied in with APR and SWANA. But I think this is something I definitely hope we can pull off in May.
Yeah.
Get at
It's a
least
big
one
deal.
Maryland worth on that.
It'd be awesome. And if you'd like, not that, I have the be all end all way of doing this, but I have learned after doing umpteen presentations and tours. So Paul, somebody named Paul was just posting in the chat that wish cycling being a double-edged sword. Okay, I was a nice person before I started all of this, and now I'm a very no-nonsense presenter. Okay, so when I see these people who you can tell are super excited about telling me how, they're going to put these things in and I'm going to handle it for them, and the answer is no. So I say, look, we only take certain things. Everything on this list is what we take. If you don't see it there, don't put it in. If you put in things we do not want, we're going to throw it out as trash. It's just more expensive trash now because we had to sort it. Leave no, illusions as to what's going to happen. We're going to trash it. And they all go, oh. And you can see their faces fall, but at the same time, now they know what to go home and do. They're not going to go convince other people to throw in wish cycling, right?
When in doubt, throw it out.
Yep. So.
And it's often embarrassing, Gretchen, because I'm the executive director of the Maryland Recycling Network, and somebody will hold something up in front of me and say, is this recyclable? And I'll go, well, I'm not really sure. So put it in the trash. And they'll look at me like, what did you just say? I said, well,
yep. Yeah.
There's an awful lot of stuff that has the chasing arrows on it that have nothing to do with its recyclability.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I do say, yeah, Paul is here saying again, you end in an uplifting fashion. Okay. So it's not about crushing people's spirits, about teaching them the reality. And then I go into what is basically Chaz's story, which is let me tell you what these items go on to be in a second life. Right. And let me tell you how valuable they have been at certain points, right? Cardboard during COVID. Congratulations. If you weren't recycling in your houses, Amazon would not have been able to continue, So yeah, you tell that whole, and I find that people really respond well when you add the economics in, add the day-to-day, that this is like the commodities market. All of a sudden they start getting interested in, it's not just recycling, it's a much bigger picture. And I had no idea how it connected to the rest of the world. So
I stand corrected by Addison. Addison, thank you very much. When in doubt, find it out. And you're right. Yes, that's usually what I try to do, but sometimes the answer is not at hand.
Yes, I go with 3 rules, and I'm more than happy to take a tour with you. I'll come down. Okay, I'm unemployed at the moment, so I'll come down, take a tour, and you guys can video all of my little things I say, and then steal whatever you want to. But I come up with 3 main categories, 3 main rules for armor. First is if it's paper, and all of these are right 95% of the time. And if everybody recycled right 95% of the time, I'd be thrilled. So they'll say to me, but what about? And I'm like, fits into that 5%, right? Let's not bother with that. Don't break your brain over it. If it is made out of paper or cardboard, if you can rip it, you can recycle it. Easy peasy. I did not make that up. Secondly, for plastics, if it is a plastic item, can you hold it in your hand, which shows what kind of size, and say it is a container with a lid? That's the rule where we are. We want bottles, jars, jugs, and tubs, empty and clean. And the third is if it's smaller than a credit card, it will fall through my system and end up as trash. And that means that your shredded paper, your Keurig cups, your utensils, your hang tags, all of these small items, that's exactly where they go because the glass gets broken into pieces that are approximately less than 2 inches. And that credit card is about that big. It just is it's a visual for people. But those 3 rules, if they do nothing else, they'll be much better recyclers just with that. But yeah, like I said, this is a lot of me thinking about how to make it easy for people, right?
Well, guys, this has been an excellent presentation. I'm thrilled to have had both of you here today and sharing this great story with everyone. I think I'm not seeing new questions, so the popcorn in the microwave has gotten very quiet. So we've reached that moment in our presentation when we're going to, first of all, thank Gretchen and Chaz for an incredible presentation. Big round of applause.
Okay. Thank you.
Come on, guys, I can't hear you. Big round of applause.
Awesome. It was an awesome presentation. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Gretchen and Chaz. Chaz, don't go anywhere. And Gretchen, let me know when you move down here. I'll need your telephone number and address and everything else.
I'll take the invite. Thank you so much.
And then before we go, once again, here's our upcoming program schedule. And a little reminder to all the non-paying members to please help us promote and implement the 3 R's by joining today and clarify the question of if it's recyclable or not. And then thanks again for everyone attending today. Really appreciate you being here and hope to see everyone in person at our conference in June. Stay well and welcome the spring.